have a very strong brand with the Kids Co. Like, why didn't you have a crappy brand?
Why didn't I do it poorly?
Yeah, why didn't you do it worse?
Yeah, I mean, look, just from a pure marketing perspective, getting to market a whole series as opposed to each individual book as a totally separate entity, way more advantage to that. Average order value. When someone can purchase 3 of your things instead of just one thing, huge advantage there. And then scalability and creation, right? For us, we've played so much inside of our own format that it's actually like...
Hi, I'm Joe Beal, the founder and CEO of Microcosm Publishing. I'm also the author of A People's Guide to Publishing, which distills what I've learned from selling millions of books over the past 28 years.
I'm Ellie Blue, the Vice President of Microcosm. We started this podcast to share what we've learned with newer publishers, so you can learn from our mistakes. Or maybe you just want to learn about the publishing industry.
Why publish thematically? And how would you suggest someone should publish thematically?
Yeah, I think there's a really wonderful thing, and maybe this is just me, I love the repetition. So when you sort of experience something and it's really great, then being able to dive into an experience that's similar but different, and that repetition of that thing. It's why I love buying the little Penguin classics. It's like, they're all totally different books, but they're packaged the same, and there's like that nice sort of feeling of going, I'm diving into the same type of world. Mm-hmm. This is why we love episodic television, by the way. And so I think it's about finding those areas that are both of sort of interest commercially. What's in the zeitgeist? What are people paying attention to? Or what are people not paying attention to that might be totally new and novel? And then what are you most equipped to dive into thematically that you have sort of authority, domain expertise? Like, I have 6 kids, so I'm like an authority on raising children, and I read like so many books to my kids. Like, I have that right to sort of step into that place. And so I think it's for folks finding that right space for themselves around those thematic topics.
And what?
I mean, like I was telling you, as I was coming in, we did this in an hour and a half, our workshop process with 40 fifth graders. Wow. We had them design covers while we were making the book with them. We did a kid's book about life and got all of their life wisdom and just sort of like, and I would just do little sentence thought starters and they would fill in the blank. And then of course they would offer me these like great aphorisms and amazing wisdom and go, oh, but life's not always perfect. It's like, great, throw that in the book. Like that, like it's a scalable model to create content. This is why I like creating book series is also, great on the fiction side of things, but I like playing in nonfiction.
So I want to shore this up with what we should have said in the beginning, which is that we're sitting here with Jelani Memory.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for joining us again. And your books are thematic and that they have like a very similar title pattern, similar style, similar... Can you describe that?
Yeah, so almost all of them, at least the bulk of the 200 titles, are all a kid's book about something. A kid's book about imagination, a kid's book about adventure. My book, a kid's book about racism, that sort of started the whole series. One of the things I think that's really fun and special and unique about not just our series but working in thematic stuff is the constraints it provides. Turns out being able to do anything or write about anything is really bad and hard, but being forced into this box of going, I must do this thing either for this specific time or this moment or this audience or about this thing, it forces you to be thoughtful and creative and also like get the thing done, like finish the thing.
Right.
Totally.
So the thing that just struck me is we live in a world with so many, literally millions, maybe tens of millions of unpublished manuscripts. And instead you kind of walked all the way around that and you were like, oh, we'll just have more people create new content that's like we know is marketable.
Yeah.
And, and it's maybe similar to how we did it too, actually, because, we didn't quite do it that way, but it's similar, where we made a model and then people saw our model and they're like, oh, I could write a book like that, I'll submit it to you.
Yeah.
And, and that's kind of why it works, whereas like most publishers, what they do is literally like, we exist, we are we tell you when it's good or not.
Right.
And then it's like, and then they see it as more, I was talking to a friend this morning and I was like, Publishers don't view a catalog as a catalog. They think about it as like a series of individual opportunities. And then one book never propels the next.
Yeah.
But this seems like you had more of a background in this to know not to do that out of the gate and to build something that like stacks.
Yeah, I mean, look, my background is like product building and storytelling and entrepreneurship. So I'd built another company, raised like literally $30 million to grow it, partnered with the Walt Disney Company and T-Mobile. And there are just like rules and laws about marketing that are sort of immutable. The last thing you want to do is like create a thing, sell it, and maybe do a good job, and then start from scratch all over again and you don't get to borrow any of that brand equity, which is like the thing that drives me nuts about publishers is that they're not brands.
Yeah.
And I understand why it's almost impossible for them to become brands. But man, like, so many more books would get sold, and so many more readers would be attracted to those books if actually they spent weirdly less time on the content and the author and more time on the brand side of things. There are some publishers that have done this, I think, to great effect, like Tor.com, one of them, where it's like, I don't care what you publish, I will just buy it because it's from you and it's going to be sci-fi or fantasy, and like, yes. So like, but part of that is like, every new book, you're sort of starting from scratch from a marketing perspective and interacting with that. And so I thought, how do we actually hijack that? And your first relationship with us as a publisher is with us as a brand. And you trust us, and you trust our approach, and you trust our voice. And actually, author not only becomes secondary, it's like thirdary. The next one is actually topic, is to go, this brand has now written about this topic. Do I care about this topic? And then, who's it by? Oh, LeVar Burton? Cool. Yeah, maybe I'll buy that. But actually, I had someone go, did you write that book? I was like, but LeVar Burton's name's on it. It's like, he wrote that book.
Right.
It's like, very clearly he wrote that book.
Like, yeah, the author brand is so unimportant that even when it is a celebrity, they're like, oh, it's a kids' book, cool.
Yeah. And you see it, like, the hierarchy of the covers. Like, a kids' book about is massive, title is smaller, author is the smallest. Like, we're literally sending those visual signals as a way to go, here's what this thing is, and here's what's important about it.
And one thing I've noticed is that, like, with marketing and also with business decisions, honestly, it's very tempting, and I don't know if this is a publishing thing or just kind of an inexperienced business person thing, and I know I've had to watch this arc in myself of learning, but it's very tempting to kind of like focus on the qualities of the thing in regards to itself or in regards to your business, rather than the quality of the thing in regards to what the reader is seeing. Like, I think for a publisher, it's very easy to be like, well, we publish work that's like really well written, beautifully written, or we publish like literary fiction, which is honestly kind of a meaningless category outside of just a very small portion of people. Or like, we publish work that's like about the human condition, but there's no market for work about the human condition. You can't go reach those people.
It's not like people go to the bookstore and they're like, my human condition is suffering, what do you recommend?
I'm gonna go to the human condition section.
Yeah, they're more like, what's a good read that you would recommend?
Yeah, or they're like, I'm looking for a book that's like about grief but doesn't involve death or something. I don't know, like, people have such specific, like, I wish romance was marketed this way, because like, people are always like kind of going to the internet, like going to Reddit. Like, you could go to Reddit and get so much advice about book marketing, and like asking things like, what are some good romance novels that don't involve people drinking alcohol, or like nobody experiences the death of a loved one, or like, that kind of thing. I mean, I think we're straying from thematic publishing. I'm straying from thematic publishing here, but
aren't we all?
I feel like when you have like a brand and you know what to expect from the brand, then you can like have themes that you explore within that, and it just gives people a better architecture, a better map for finding the books they want than if they're just kind of like guessing based on the vibe of the cover art.
Yeah, which book discovery, I mean, don't get me started on that. Yeah. It's a mess.
Yeah, it is.
Right. So, I mean, the greatest mistake I ever made was trying, being like, okay, I'm bored of doing this theme. I want to expand to these adjacent themes. And the audience was not willing to follow me.
Yeah.
How do you stay so focused?
Well, I haven't always stayed as focused, and then the audience goes, "Hey, no, we don't want you to do that. Go do this other thing that you were doing."
Oh, can you give an example of that?
Well, look, I had raised $7 million, built a Kids Co. That was after millions of dollars in revenue, grew it up, and I was like, oh, we're going to go from book company to media company, which we did sort of half successfully. We started a podcast network, 10 original shows for kids, some critically acclaimed, and then we built an app with tons of content, sort of masterclass for kids, teens, and tweens. The podcast network kind of worked. The app didn't work at all, and the books kept working.
Right. And you're like, oh, books.
Yeah, it's like, oh, the books was just the best idea in the first place, and everybody wanted us to just do the books.
Right. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, like, I advise a lot of entrepreneurs, and there's always a temptation to go, if the first idea worked, the second idea will work, and especially if I build an audience, I can just take that audience over here. It turns out people don't want or like that. They like the thing you're doing. That's why they're there, and you haven't bought the trust for them to just follow you over to this other thing. And like most companies, publishers, anybody, they're kind of usually good at one thing. If they're good at two things, like, it's rare. Good at three things, like, never.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. People like what they like. They're not, and part of that's you, but that's fickle.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really good advice. Can you throw one on there so this doesn't end in a dour note?
I just feel like this episode, we should say that it's about brand, not about publishing.
Well, but
that's what it's about.
but thematic publishing is brand.
Because I feel like the word theme is like very loaded in a literary way. That's my contribution to the bumper.
Oh, gotcha.
Mm.
Like themes of love and loss. That's what I think of when I think of themes.
Yeah. Fair. Yeah. And I took it as a quite literal thing, obviously related to the work that I do.
I feel like your answer was way more interesting, though, than, like, I mean, I never saw the question. We don't know what's in the question asker's head. Question asker, are you listening? Was this helpful?
Right. They wanted to know why it's important and then how to do it.
Oh,
and
well,
I don't know.
I feel like...
Yeah, we did that.
Thanks for joining us once again.
Please send your questions to podcast@microcosmpublishing.com so we can answer them on future episodes.
And please give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere else that podcasts are reviewed.
You can find us on the internet at microcosm.pub,
On Twitter at microcosm,
on Facebook at Microcosm Publishing,
on Instagram at microcosm_pub.
and here in Portland, Oregon on North Williams Avenue.
Thank you so much.
Have a wonderful week.